I didn't just bring his ashes, I brought every word he never got to say. The hum of the plane was steady, but inside me, everything trembled. The urn sat in my lap, wrapped in a white handkerchief I had embroidered myself, the same one I had tucked into my husband's suit pocket the day we married, 47 years ago. I left one corner untied, as if he might still need air to breathe. People passed down the aisle, giving me those polite, uncertain looks. Some thought it was just an old woman holding a strange face. But to me, it was him, my Winston. My partner. My laughter. My fight. My home. He used to say, if I go first, promise me you won't leave me behind. So I promised. And now, even as the sky swallowed us whole, I kept that promise, flying halfway across the world with my husband's ashes and a suitcase full of memories. When the plane lifted off from Kingston, the island shrank beneath clouds. The sea glittered like tears, quiet, endless, unforgiving. Somewhere below lay the house we built, the mango tree we planted when our first son was born, and the veranda where Winston hummed to old ska tunes as the sun melted into the hills. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass. "We are going home, my love," I whispered. "Or what's left of it." This trip wasn't for me. It was for him, to fulfill the wish he whispered with his final breath, "Bury me where our family still remembers us." That meant America. That meant our children. He believed love could cross oceans. But I knew better. Oceans can change people. And silence can become a kind of death. When Winston passed, only one of our children came to the funeral, our son Richard. He stood at the back, wearing sunglasses, glancing at his watch more than the coffin. Still, he had hugged me afterward and said, "Mama, come stay with us in the States. You will have space to breathe. You can rest." I smiled through grief and nodded, though I knew promises fade faster than flowers. Years passed. His invitation never came again. Until 2 weeks ago, a sudden call, a hesitant voice. "Mama, I think it's time. Maybe you could come visit, bring Dad's ashes too." There had been a pause, one I didn't want to notice. But hope makes fools of us all. I packed like a woman preparing for a homecoming. I polished the urn until it gleamed. Inside, I tucked a small envelope, Winston's last letter. I folded my recipes, the ones my children grew up with, bread pudding, brown stewed chicken, sorrel, each card smudged with years of Sunday dinners and laughter. I even packed the framed picture of Winston holding Richard as a baby. When I zipped the suitcase, I whispered, "We are going to see our boy again." The cabin lights dimmed mid-flight. Families slept, lovers leaned against each other. I stayed awake, tracing the edge of the urn, carved wood with a golden band. We had bought it years ago from a market in Kingston. The vendor said it was made from wood blessed by the sea. Winston had laughed. "If it floats, maybe I will find my way back to you." Now, as the engines hummed, I prayed maybe he still could. 8 hours later, the plane jolted down onto a runway wrapped in gray clouds. People sprang up, eager to leave. I waited, patient, polite, invisible. When I finally stood, I felt the ache of every year, every goodbye. At customs, the officer eyed the urn. "You are bringing human remains?" "Yes," I said softly. "My husband." He glanced at the documents, stamped them, and nodded. "Sorry for your loss, ma'am." I smiled faintly. "He is still with me." Outside, the air bit cold. But my heart warmed at the thought of seeing Richard again, of hearing, "Mama, you're finally here." I pictured hugs, grandchildren's laughter, my daughter-in-law helping with my bags. I pictured love waiting just beyond the sliding doors. 10 minutes passed. Then 30. Then an hour. No car. No call. The crowd thinned until I was just an old woman standing under the blinking arrival sign, clutching her husband's ashes. I dialed Richard. It rang once, then voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. A man nearby noticed my worry. "Traffic maybe," he said kindly. Give it a little time. So I waited more. When the airport began to empty, I sat on a cold bench, the urn beside me like another passenger stranded mid-journey. The glowing board above me read "Welcome home." But home, it seemed, had forgotten me. Behind me, a group of women chatted, their accents Jamaican. I turned, hungry for a piece of familiarity. They were talking about Montego Bay, and then I heard a name that made my blood freeze. Remember Richard Davis? Used to live near Gloucester Avenue? My heart leapt. That was my Richard. Oh yes, another replied casually. His poor mother passed away last year, didn't she? My world went silent. What did you say? I asked. The first woman blinked. We just heard his mama died in Jamaica, right? He even posted about it online. Said it was hard flying back for the funeral. The air left my lungs. I buried my husband, I whispered. Not myself. They froze, murmured apologies, and hurried away. But I barely heard them. I just sat there, gripping the urn until my hands went numb. The world tilted. The floor seemed to sway. I had flown across oceans to bring my husband home. But my own son had buried me, in words, in lies, inconvenience. I called again, straight to voicemail. His voice, cheerful, "Hey, this is Richard. Leave a message." My throat burned. I whispered, "You hear that, Winston? Your wife's dead. At least, that's what our son says." Around me, the airport hummed with life. Announcements. Footsteps. Laughter. But I sat still, a ghost among the living. A janitor noticed me, walked over gently. "You okay, ma'am?" I nodded weakly. He looked at the urn, then said, "Sometimes people forget what matters. But God don't." Then he walked away, mop squeaking behind him. His words clung to me. God don't forget. Maybe Winston didn't either. Maybe this was his final test. To see if I had still kept my promise when even my own blood turned cold. I rose slowly, every bone heavy with memory, but something in me refused to stay broken. If my son had buried my name, I had dig it up myself. I pulled my coat tighter, clutching the urn to my chest. "We are not finished, my love," I whispered. "Not until they remember who we were." And with that, I walked out of the airport, into the freezing night, into the story Winston and I were still writing. Because the dead can rest only when the living make peace. You can prepare for grief, but not for the sound of your own child locking you out. The taxi wound through rows of perfect houses, neat lawns, white fences, and windows that glittered like nothing bad had ever happened behind them. The kind of street where people smile for the neighbors but whisper through the curtains when the lights go out. I kept the urn clutched to my chest the whole way, afraid someone might take it, or worse, ask about it. Each time the driver hit a bump, I whispered, "Careful." Winston's riding too. When the car finally slowed, I stared out at the house that was supposed to be home. Richard's house. I had seen it in Christmas cards, the kind with printed snowflakes and staged smiles. It looked bigger in person. Perfect. Silent. 2 cars in the driveway, a wreath on the door, wind chimes singing soft lies in the breeze. A picture of the American dream, built on forgetting where you came from. The driver leaned out. "You sure someone's home, ma'am?" I nodded faintly. He knows I am coming. At least, I thought he did. I climbed the short path, suitcase rattling behind me. My heart thudded with every step. This wasn't supposed to feel like trespassing. I pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed faintly inside. No answer. I pressed again. Still nothing. Then a flicker. A curtain moved just slightly. Someone was watching. I knocked, gentle but sure. "Richard?" "It's Mama." Silence stretched so long I thought maybe I had imagined it. Then a woman's voice. Calm, careful, rehearsed. Who is it? It's me, I said softly. Your mother-in-law. From Jamaica. A pause. Then whispers. Muffled, urgent. Finally, the door opened halfway. She appeared, Simone. My daughter-in-law. Beautiful, polished, wrapped in a silk robe that shimmered under the porch light. Her face was pale. Oh, Mrs. Davis. We weren't expecting you today. I frowned. Your husband told me to come this week. I called. I left messages. A practiced smile flickered. Yes, of course. It's just, we've been so busy. The baby's sleeping, and Richard's at work. Behind her, I saw toys scattered across the soft rug, the smell of baby lotion, a framed photo, Richard, Simone, and their child. Smiling. Whole. No sign of me. No trace I had ever existed. May I come in? I asked. Her smile faltered. Oh, maybe later. We are not quite ready for visitors. Visitors? I repeated. I am not a visitor, Simone. I am family. She glanced upstairs, anxious. Richard will call you, all right? We can plan something nice. A dinner, maybe. I took a step forward, and she instinctively blocked the door with her hand. Her eyes darted to the urn. What's that? My husband, I said. He is home too. Color drained from her face. I held the urn tighter. He wanted to see his son one last time. Mrs. Davis, she whispered, please, now isn't a good time. I heard a door close upstairs, followed by soft laughter, a baby's laughter. My grandchild. The one I had never met. I looked past her and saw the hallway walls, a gallery of family photos. Birthdays. Vacations. Christmas mornings. Every picture full of joy. Every frame full of someone else. Not one included me. I steadied my breath. I flew across an ocean for this. He's been waiting for his son's prayer before I lay him to rest. You'll let me in. Her lips trembled, not from anger, but guilt. Please don't make a scene, she whispered. People talk in this neighborhood. That sentence hit harder than it should have. People talk. She looked around the porch like even the sight of me, a mother, an old woman, was a scandal. As if grief had a dress code. A car pulled into the driveway, sleek black, engine purring like money. Richard. He got out, tie loosened, briefcase in hand, the same boy ID once sent to school with bread and callaloo, now a man with shoulders that carried shame like it was luggage. When he saw me, something flickered in his face. Not joy. Not surprise. Something worse, recognition mixed with guilt. Mama, he said finally, stepping closer. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? I repeated softly. You invited me. He rubbed the back of his neck. I said maybe later in the year. Not now. Simone looked down. I felt my fingers tighten around the urn. I brought Winston, I said. He wanted to be here. With family. Richard's tone hardened. You shouldn't have come without telling us. Things are complicated right now. Complicated? I echoed. You mean inconvenient. Silence fell like frost. I buried your father, I whispered. I buried half my soul. And still, I came. Because I thought love didn't change with distance. Simone turned away, tears trembling but unshed. Richard's voice softened slightly. Mama, people don't just show up unannounced here. That's not how it works. I looked straight at him. People don't do a lot of things here, like remember who raised them. He flinched. A gust of wind shook the wind chimes. Upstairs, the baby began to cry. Simone whispered, please, not outside. The neighbors, for a moment, I thought she meant she had let me in. But she only turned and said, "I will put the baby down," before disappearing inside. Richard stepped closer, his voice low. "Mama, listen. I told people you had passed. It was easier that way." The words didn't hit all at once. They dripped, one by one, until the meaning sank deep enough to drown me. "You told them I was dead?" He looked away. "It started as a misunderstanding. I didn't correct it. People assumed, and I just let them." I stared at him. "Easier for who, Richard? For you?" He didn't answer. The world tilted. The house behind him, my son's home, looked suddenly like a fortress. Polished, impenetrable, a museum where I had already been erased. He sighed. "Let me book you a hotel for tonight. We will talk in the morning." I almost laughed, a small, hollow sound. "I spent 47 years keeping a promise," I said softly. "And this is what I flew into." He reached out, almost tenderly. "Mama, please," I stepped back. "Don't mama me. You buried me once already." Simone appeared behind him again, holding the baby. The child's face glowed in the hallway light, soft, peaceful, innocent. She whispered something I couldn't hear. Richard's expression hardened. He turned back toward me. "Good night, Mama." And then he closed the door. Not cruelly, not kindly, just completely. I stood there, staring at the door's polished wood until it blurred. The porch light flickered above me. From somewhere down the street, laughter floated through the dark, the kind of laughter that comes from a family that belongs. I wanted to knock again, to beg, but mothers don't beg for doors to open. They build new ones. Finally, I turned and walked away, the suitcase dragging behind, wheels clattering like the echo of my own heartbeat. At the corner, I looked back once. The lights inside dimmed, one by one, until only the nursery window still glowed. Behind the glass, I saw a small silhouette, my granddaughter, rocking in her mother's arms. And even through the cold, even through the ache, I smiled. "She doesn't know it yet," I whispered, cradling the urn. "But her grandmother's not a ghost. She's a storm. They say ashes to ashes, dust to dust, but what if the ashes don't belong where they are sent?" The morning the package arrived, the sky hung low and bruised. The kind of gray that feels like it's watching you, waiting. The postman wouldn't even meet my eyes when he handed it over. Just a polite nod, mumbled "sign here," and then he was gone before I could ask where it came from. But I didn't need to. The handwriting on the label told me everything. My son's handwriting. Sharp. Precise. Distant. The box was too light for its size. Taped perfectly at every edge. A box that didn't want to be opened. Still, my fingers shook as I tore through the seal. And there it was. The urn. The one I had mailed him a month ago. My husband's ashes. Charles. Returned to sender. No note. No message. Just silence, cold, deliberate, cruel. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, staring at it. The urn looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown older, smaller myself. Next to it sat a vase of lilies, their petals already browning at the edges, like they, too, had given up waiting. Every morning for days, I passed that table. Pretended not to see it. Pretended it wasn't whispering to me. But even the floorboards seemed to know. Every creak, every sigh of the wind outside said the same thing: he doesn't want him. I called my son. Once. Straight to voicemail. I wrote him a letter. Short. Simple. "Please, tell me why." Weeks passed. Nothing. It wasn't anger I felt, not at first. It was confusion. How do you reject ashes? How do you return what's left of love? So I did what mothers do when silence becomes unbearable. I drove. 6 hours down endless highways and narrow back roads, through towns that blurred into one another. The kind of drive where the radio becomes your only friend. I rehearsed what I had say. Richard, your father deserves peace. Richard, we don't abandon the dead. Richard. But when I finally pulled up to his house, every word turned to dust on my tongue. It was bigger than I imagined. Glass doors, trimmed hedges, everything neat and perfect. A house that didn't need memories, it had polish instead. Through the window, I saw him. My son, alive, laughing, and next to him a woman, young, warm, beautiful, her hand on his shoulder like it had always belonged there. I stood outside that perfect home with a box of ashes in my arms and realized I didn't belong here anymore. Still, I knocked. Once, twice. When he opened the door, the warmth drained from his face. Mama, what are you doing here? His voice wasn't harsh, just tired. Like someone who had already written his side of the story and didn't want edits. I lifted the urn between us. You sent your father back. He sighed, slow and heavy. Because I don't need him haunting my home. That word, haunting, hit me like a slap. Haunting. As if love could turn into a ghost just because it made someone uncomfortable. A woman's voice came from behind him, soft, careful. Maybe she should come in? He hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and new paint. Too clean, too new. Like everything that came before had been scrubbed away. Family photos lined the hallway, a wedding, a baby girl, birthday candles frozen mid-blow. So many smiles. But not one included me. He poured me tea. I didn't touch it. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, the way he used to when confessing something as a child. Mom, he began gently, you have to let go. Dad's gone. He's been gone for years. I looked at the urn. You don't send the dead back like a package you regret ordering. He leaned back, voice tightening. You don't keep them in your kitchen either. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Final. I wanted to scream. To remind him of who we were, the three of us. Of the nights Charles carried him through storms, whispering lullabies until fever broke. Of the Christmas mornings, the burnt pancakes, the laughter that filled every wall of our little home. But the truth was crueler than memory. He had built a new life, one that didn't have space for the old. So I stayed quiet. Because sometimes silence is the only way to keep from breaking. When I left, I didn't say goodbye. He didn't either. The road home was long and wordless. The kind of drive where thoughts echo louder than music. By the time I reached the coast, the sun had begun to fall, a red wound sinking into the horizon. I parked near a cliff overlooking the sea, where waves crashed like applause for something already over. I carried the urn out of the car and sat on a rock, the wind clawing at my hair. The air tasted like salt and endings. I whispered to it, maybe you were never meant to rest there, Charles. Maybe not with him. And for the first time since I had lost him, I didn't cry. Not a single tear. Because maybe grief wasn't meant to drown me anymore. The wind picked up, wild and restless, like it recognized him. I opened the lid. The ashes lifted in a spiral, not falling into the ocean as I'd expected, but caught in the gust, rising higher, drifting inland. Up, toward the hills. Toward the place where our first home once stood. Almost like he was going home without me. I stood there, watching until the last gray fleck vanished into light. And I whispered, go on then, my love. I will find my way too, somehow. When I got back to the car, my phone buzzed. A message from Richard. Mom, I didn't mean to hurt you. The screen glowed like a wound in the dark. I stared at it for a long time, until the light faded on its own. I didn't reply, because some things don't need answering. Some silences are the answer. As I started the engine, I looked at the empty seat beside me. For the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt lighter. Maybe grief isn't about keeping what's gone. Maybe it's about making space for what remains. As the road curved away from the sea, I said softly, "Rest easy, Charles. Our son may not know where to place you, but I do." And somewhere between wind and distance, I swore I heard him whisper back, "Then that's enough, my love. That's enough." The radio flickered on, static first, then music. A song we used to dance to, faint but alive. And as the last note faded into the night, I realized something you don't always need. Closure. Sometimes it's enough just to stop knocking on closed doors. They tried to bury love without witnesses. The ocean was quieter that morning, too quiet. The kind of quiet that hums beneath your ribs before something breaks. The sky wore a bruised gray, like it was holding its breath for a storm that never came. I had not planned to return. But something in the wind called me back, the same way the sea always calls the shore after pulling away. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe defiance. Or maybe the simple truth, a mother always knows when her child is lying. The sand was still cold when I reached the dunes. Each step sank softly, the grains whispering around my ankles, as though even the earth didn't want to disturb what waited below. I kept to the shadows, shawl wrapped tight around my shoulders. Down by the water stood my son, and her. The woman with the gentle laugh, the polished grief, and hair that never once bowed to the wind. Their little girl, my granddaughter, stood between them, clutching a seashell like a tiny crown. And there, on a fold-out table draped with white cloth, sat an urn. Silver. Gleaming. Perfect. But I knew, the moment I saw it, that it was empty. They were posing for a camera on a tripod. Smiling, turning slightly toward the light, pretending the chill didn't bite through their clothes. My daughter-in-law dabbed her eyes with a tissue, careful not to smudge her mascara, before checking her reflection in her phone. My son rested his hand on the fake urn, bowing his head for a beat too long. The picture of sorrow. A performance. I watched from the distance, my heart twisting. A theater of mourning. For likes. For sympathy. For the world to see how devoted they were, after mailing back the real ashes like a rejected memory. The tide rolled in, slow, steady, whispering. Each wave seemed to count down. 3, 2, 1. I stepped forward. The sand crunched beneath my shoes. That sound, small, fragile, was enough to break the illusion. My son turned first. His smile faltered mid-sentence. "Mama?" He said it like a secret he thought he had buried. I didn't answer. I just held up the box in my arms, the real urn. The one dusted with salt, travel, and truth. "This," I said, my voice shaking, "is your father." Simone's eyes widened. What do you mean?" We're filming. For who?" I snapped. "For strangers who never knew him. For people who will scroll past your grief between breakfast photos." My son's jaw tightened, the wind catching his hair. "You shouldn't be here. And you shouldn't be pretending to care," I said softly. The air stilled, even the waves seemed to pause. The little girl, innocent, curious, tugged at her mother's dress. "Is that Grandpa?" she asked, pointing at the urn in my arms. Simone froze. My son looked at her, then at me, as if waiting for someone else to answer. But no one spoke. Silence. Raw. Shaming. He couldn't even say yes. I took another step closer. The wind picked up, scattering bits of dry seaweed around my feet. "You mailed him back to me," I said, like an unwanted gift. "And now you stand here, pretending he is beside you for the camera." He swallowed. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" I cut in. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you buried your conscience and called it closure." The little girl looked between us, her small face confused. Simone knelt beside her, holding her close, not out of comfort, but out of fear. I set the real urn on the sand beside the fake one. The difference was striking, one heavy with truth, the other hollow and perfect. "Go on," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "If you want to say goodbye, say it to the man who raised you, not the one you made up for pictures." My words hung there, sharp and cold as the wind. Simone turned away, tears welling, her hands trembling around the child. My son stood frozen, looking down at the two urns, the weight of all his choices staring back at him. His lips parted, as though he wanted to say something. But nothing came, because there was nothing left to say. The sea surged forward, foam curling around our feet. One of the waves reached the fake urn first, toppling it gently. The lid rolled off and clinked against a rock, empty, hollow. He watched it roll, shame flickering across his face. I whispered, barely loud enough for him to hear. Even the sea knows the difference between truth and display. For a long moment, nobody moved. The camera's red light blinked faintly, still recording. It had captured everything, the lies, the confrontation, the silence that followed. Then the tripod fell, knocking against the sand with a dull thud. The spell was broken. My granddaughter began to cry, small, confused sobs that seemed to carry the grief none of us could voice. Simone dropped to her knees, cradling her, whispering apologies that weren't for me. And my son, my only child, just stood there, caught between two urns, two truths, two versions of himself. I looked at him one last time. He was still my boy, even if he had forgotten how to be a son. I could have shouted. I could have thrown the urn into the sea and let it swallow the last of our history. But instead, I reached down, brushed the real urn gently, and said, "Rest now, Charles. Your son still doesn't know how to hold you, but I will always remember how you held us." Then I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard the waves crash louder, as if the ocean itself wanted to wash away what had just happened. The wind tangled in my shawl, tugging me forward, like the world itself was done with pretending. Somewhere behind me, I heard the faint clatter of metal, the fake urn rolling into the tide, disappearing beneath the foam. The sound of something false finally being carried away. My son called after me once. Just once. "Mama." I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. Because some goodbyes aren't meant to be shared. They are meant to be earned. At the top of the dunes, I paused. The wind whipped across my face, cold and clean. Below me, the waves erased every footprint, his, hers, mine, until the beach was bare again. That's the thing about the sea. It forgives faster than people do. It knows how to let go. I looked down at my hands, empty now, and whispered, "They tried to bury love without witnesses. But love doesn't stay buried. It finds its way back to the shore." And with that, I walked away, not from grief, but through it. He left me his ashes, and his last secret. The argument began before the tide had even pulled back. By the time I turned around, my son was following me up the beach, face flushed, eyes wild with shame and anger. The wind tangled his words, but I caught the sound of betrayal, not mine, but his. "Why did you come here, Mom? Why now? After everything?" He said it like grief was an inconvenience. Like my being alive made his lie harder to maintain. I stopped near a driftwood log, setting the urn down gently beside me. "I came because he asked me to," I said. "Because even in death, he trusted me to protect what we built." He shook his head. "Protect what?" "The past. We were just trying to move forward." "By erasing him?" I asked softly. "By scattering lies before you scattered his ashes?" His mouth opened, then shut. Silence again, the kind that makes truth echo louder. The daughter-in-law appeared next, phone still in her hand, hair whipping across her face. "We didn't mean to upset you," she said through gritted teeth. "We just wanted to honor him in our own way. But you had to make it about yourself, as usual." I met her gaze, calm, cold. "Honor him?" I murmured. "You brought an empty urn to the ocean." Her face reddened. You're impossible. You've always controlled everything, even him. Maybe that's why he left nothing for you to control anymore. That made my son flinch. And that was when I decided it was time to end it. I had held my tongue long enough. I bent down, fingers tracing the smooth base of the urn. You think he left me nothing, I said quietly. But he left me everything I needed. My son frowned. What do you mean? I turned the urn over. Beneath the small metal plaque engraved with his name was a thin line, barely visible unless you were searching for it. I twisted it, just slightly. The base loosened, revealing a hidden compartment no bigger than a folded letter. His name. His handwriting. Still steady, like the day he used to write love notes on napkins. The paper was yellowed, folded twice, sealed with a faint wax mark. My breath caught. I had known it was there. He had told me before the sickness took him. When the time comes, he had whispered, hand trembling in mine, open it where they can see what truth looks like. I held the letter up to the light. Your father, I said softly, was never one for speeches. But he knew the value of words that lasted. My son took a hesitant step forward. Mom, what is that? A will, I said. Written by his hand. Not the one your lawyers filed after. The daughter-in-law scoffed. You expect us to believe that? After all these years? I didn't answer her. I just broke the seal. The letter inside was simple, one page, written in black ink that had bled slightly at the edges from humidity. I read aloud, to my wife, Margaret, the keeper of my years, the one who never left my side. I leave you the house, the land, and all that grows upon it, in your name, until your final rest. Let no hand or heart claim it while you are still beats. For our son, I leave the memories we made. When he is ready to build, he will understand what we meant to preserve. Until the sea takes both our names, I trust you to carry what's left of me, not because you must, but because you always did. The words trembled from my lips, carried away by the wind. My son stared, pale. That can't be right. The lawyer said, I never stopped paying our lawyer, I interrupted gently. You remember Mr. Cole? The one who used to bring you peppermint candies? He is still in Kingston. He filed this himself, sealed and witnessed. His voice cracked. But you told me the house was already mine. You said, I said it would be, I replied, when you were ready to honor what it meant. The daughter-in-law stepped forward, snatching at the letter. This is ridiculous. Convenient, isn't it? That this just happens to appear now? You are manipulating him, just like always. I looked her in the eye. I have been called many things in my life. But manipulative? No, dear. I am just thorough. Her face hardened. You came here to take everything back, didn't you? My voice softened. No. I came here to remind you what everything really is. She turned away, furious, muttering under her breath, heels sinking into the sand as she stormed toward the car. My son stood motionless. The ocean reflected in his eyes, restless and confused. He finally whispered, You came here to take everything back, didn't you? I smiled sadly. Your father and I built that house with love, sweat, and years we will never get back. All I came for was respect. But if I have to fight for what's sacred, then maybe love needs to come second. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and something heavier. Remembrance, perhaps. I folded the letter, placed it back in the compartment, and sealed the urn once more. Then I turned to him. He wanted me to carry him until the house was a piece again. That's not about ownership. It's about honor. He said nothing. Just looked at me, like he was seeing both a stranger and a mother all at once. I lifted the urn, holding it close. You think I came to take everything back, I whispered, half to him, half to the waves, but what I really came for was to bring him home. The camera they had set up earlier was still standing in the sand, red light blinking faintly. It had captured everything. The truth. The letter. The confrontation. The world that once saw a fake ceremony would now see the real one, whether they meant it or not. I turned and walked toward the sea, the sun rising higher behind me. The tide was coming in fast, and for the first time I didn't resist it. Some part of me believed maybe he was waiting, right where the waves met the shore, smiling, proud that I'd kept my promise. All I ever wanted was one room where love wasn't a guest. The house felt smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the silence, the kind that sits heavy on the furniture and makes every memory creak louder than the floorboards. When I opened the front door, the air was thick with the scent of dust and lilies, the kind they used to cover something gone sour. The urn was heavy in my hands, but the weight was familiar. Like a promise I'd carried too long to put down now. My son followed behind me, quiet, uncertain. He had not said much since the beach. His wife had not come back with him. Maybe she was too proud. Or maybe she finally realized this fight wasn't about property, it was about history. I set the urn down on the mantel, right beneath the photograph of our wedding day. He looked so young there, grinning like the sun was shining just for us. I touched the frame, my fingers tracing the edge of his smile. He always wanted the ashes here, I said softly. Not in some ceremony. Not for the world to see. Just here. Home. My son swallowed hard. Mom, I didn't know about the letter. I know, I said. You believed what you were told. You trusted someone who didn't understand what it meant to build something together. He shifted uneasily, guilt flickering in his eyes. I thought I was protecting you. From what? I asked, turning to him. From grief? From being forgotten? You can't protect people by pretending they are gone. You just bury them twice. He lowered his gaze, words failing him. I sighed, the anger leaving me like air escaping a balloon. I was tired of shouting through generations, tired of trying to teach love through loss. I walked past him and ran my hand over the old sideboard, still scarred with burn marks from when he and his father tried to fix the toaster together. It was the same house, the same wood, but a different kind of emptiness. I looked back at him. You don't lose a home by sharing it, I said. You lose it when you shut the door. He blinked, confused at first, then it hit him. Tears welled, but he didn't let them fall. Are you forgiving me? I smiled, not out of softness, but understanding. Forgiveness isn't a gift, I said. It's a release. You carry it until it starts to burn you. Then you set it down and hope it cools on its own. He nodded slowly, stepping closer, like a boy again, cautious, but wanting to be held by something familiar. I am sorry, Mom, he said finally. I know, I whispered. And that's enough. We stood there for a while, saying nothing. Just the sound of the clock ticking, his father's clock, the one that never kept perfect time but never stopped either. Maybe that's what love is, imperfect, relentless, and still somehow working. As evening slipped through the windows, painting the walls gold, I opened the urn. The ashes were fine, like sand from another world. I took a small handful and walked out to the garden, his garden. He used to wake up early just to tend the soil before work. Said the earth talked if you listened. I never believed him until now. The soil was soft, still breathing from the day's warmth. I knelt down, letting the ashes fall between my fingers. They said there was no room for me, I murmured, voice trembling. But you made sure there always would be. The ashes caught the wind, spinning, glimmering for a heartbeat before settling over the flowers. It was strange, it didn't feel like goodbye. It felt like he was coming home. Behind me, my son watched silently. He didn't try to stop me. Maybe for the first time, he understood this wasn't about possession, or legacy, or inheritance. It was about belonging. When I turned back inside, I noticed something new on the mantel. The letter, folded neatly beside the urn. My son must have placed it there. A small gesture, but it spoke louder than any apology. I sat in the old rocking chair, the same one I had nursed him in. The wood creaked beneath me like it remembered. I pulled my shawl tighter and looked around, at the curtains I had sewn by hand, the clock that ticked too loud, the faint echo of his laughter that still lived in the corners. And I realized I didn't need the whole house anymore. Just this one room. The room where memories still breathed. The room where love wasn't a guest, but a resident. Later that night, when the house had settled into silence and the moonlight spilled through the window, I pulled out my phone. The ticket confirmation was already on the screen, one way, back to Jamaica. I smiled faintly. There was nothing left to fight for here. The ashes were home, the truth was known, and the rest, well, the rest would heal in time. I placed a small note on the table before leaving. Don't try to fill rooms with things, son. Fill them with truth. That's what keeps a house standing. Then I walked through the front door one last time. Outside, the wind carried the scent of hibiscus and sea salt, faint, but enough to make me think of the island waiting for me. The air was cool. Kind. The stars were awake. As I reached the gate, I turned back. Through the window, the mantel glowed softly in the lamplight, the urn, the letter, the framed photo. Everything exactly where it belonged. I whispered to the night, "You are home now, love." And as I walked away, suitcase rolling softly over the gravel, I felt something lift. The weight of years. The silence of being unwelcome. The ache of carrying both love and loss. All of it, lighter now. The plane ticket was just a detail. I had already begun the journey back long before I packed my bag. Because coming home isn't about where you land. It's about who is waiting, even if it's just a memory strong enough to keep a room warm. They said there was no room for me, but he made sure there always would be.